Eli Creed found the map folded between dime novel pages, sold by a peddler too drunk to know its worth. 10 cents bought him a crumpled sheet smeared with tobacco stains, marked with black X's that cut across his own grazing land. At first he laughed, thinking it a child's game. But that night, by lantern glow, he traced the hand-drawn ridges and gullies and realized the lines matched the country he rode every day. The X's weren't random. They sat on places where no man bothered to dig, behind the dry creek, under the cottonwoods near the schoolhouse, one even in the middle of Main Street itself. He rode out before dawn with a spade, the map crackling in his pocket. The prairie was still, the horizon streaked red. He stopped at the first X, a bare patch near his north fence line where even weeds refused to grow. He dug, each shovelful releasing the smell of old earth, until his blade struck something hollow. A box, tin and rusted, buried not 2 feet deep. He pried it open. Inside lay bones, a child's femur wrapped in cloth, and a ledger thin as a psalm book. The names inside twisted his gut. Sheriff Tomlin, Banker Avery, Preacher Shaw. Dates beside them, amounts paid, notations of land cleared. Eli sat in the dust, heart pounding. This was no treasure map. It was a record of theft, maybe murder, hidden where no honest man would think to look. Hoofbeats pounded in the distance. He shoved the ledger under his coat and kicked dirt over the bones. 3 riders approached, faces hard in the morning sun. Neighbors he'd known since boyhood, faces that now looked carved from stone. "Find something, Creed?" one called, too casual. Eli's mouth went dry. He thought of lying, thought of handing over the map and pretending ignorance. But the ledger pressed heavy against his ribs, whispering of secrets already clawing their way into daylight. The riders dismounted, spades in hand, grins too tight. One spat into the dirt. "Funny thing, Eli, digging holes where you don't belong." The wind dropped. The prairie held its breath. Eli realized the whole town must know about the X's, and every soul had agreed to leave them buried, until his dime had bought him the key. And now, with bones under his boots and names under his coat, he understood why the peddler had sold the map cheap. It wasn't a bargain. It was a death sentence waiting to be claimed. They stood grinning at the open hole like men at a well. But the only water here was sweat on Eli's back. He kept his face empty. He'd been a poor liar as a boy. Now he tried being a quiet one. "Burying a sick calf," he said, letting his voice drag. "Rot stinks up the grass if you don't." "Funny," the tall rider said. "Looks like you're unburying, Creed." "Ground caves," Eli answered. "Fence post fell in. I'm fixing it." They stared another breath. Then the second man spat and looked off toward the sun. "Let him fix his post? Sheriff will hear." That last part landed like a nail. They rode off slow, glancing back as if they'd left a fuse smoldering. Eli dropped to one knee and swept the remaining dirt into the hole with his hat. Bones hid under the soft collapse. The tin box went in too. He tamped it flat with the back of his shovel until the surface looked like plain prairie again. Then he wiped his hands on his jeans and mounted up. The ledger under his coat felt like a live thing. Wind pushed heat along the fence line. Meadowlarks sang the same 3 notes they'd sung his whole life, as if nothing had changed. He knew better. He rode for town at a slow walk to keep the dust down and his thoughts from outrunning sense. Sheriff Tomlin waited under the cottonwood by the jail. Boot heel hooked on the hitch rail, hat low. Banker Avery stood near him in a city vest, cuffs sharp, smile thin as a knife. Preacher Shaw hovered with a prayer book clutched like a shield. Folks on the boardwalk tried hard to look elsewhere. Doors whispered shut. "Morning, Eli," Tomlin said, eyes flat. Here till you've taken to digging on holy ground." "What ground isn't holy, Sheriff?" Eli said. His mouth tasted like iron. Shaw's lips pursed. "Boot Hill, for one. A burial mound near your north fence, for another." "I mended a post," Eli said. Ground sank. "If a coyote left bones there, that's God's business." Tomlin's gaze stayed on the bulge at Eli's coat where the ledger pressed. Eli kept his arm loose, as if nothing weighed there. Avery spoke soft, the way a man talks when he's about to drown you and wants you to lean into the water. "You're behind on your note, Eli?" 6 months. Be a shame if we had to call it today." "That a bank talking?" Eli said. "Or a shepherd counting sheep before the slaughter?" "Mind your words," Shaw snapped, pink with heat. "You stir unrest, you reap unrest." "I never planted a thing that came up unrest," Eli thought. He kept his face still. "What's the charge, Sheriff?" Tomlin flicked a glance to Avery, then back. "Grave robbing is a hang offense in some counties. Lucky for you, we're a merciful town. Leave holes to men in black coats. Leave sermons to men with collars. Leave law to men with badges. Simple as breathing." "And if I can't," Eli said. "Then you stop breathing," the sheriff said, almost gentle. "And your herd gets sold as an example to other curious fools." Eli nodded like a man chastened. "My breath's steady." He touched the brim of his hat and rode on. When he turned the corner, he let it out hard and fast, anger cutting his throat raw. He needed a mind he trusted, and there was only one that had made sense of numbers for a boy who grew cattle, and shame better than letters. The schoolhouse sat white at the far end of Maine, the paint flaking like a wintered fence. A bell hung quiet in the stubby frame. Children's voices chased dust around the yard. Nora Finch was leaning out the window, erasing sums with the edge of a slate. Her sleeves were rolled, her wrists brown from sun, her hair pinned in ways that never quite held. She had a way of speaking that made hard truths sit down and behave. She also had a history with Eli that both of them pretended had never mattered, and both of them carried like a scar. He tied off at the back and slipped in the side door while the pupils chanted times tables. She heard his boots and did not look up right away. "You missed your recitation by 15 years, she said, voice dry. Then she saw his face, and all the laughter went out of hers. "Who's dead?" "Maybe all of us if we read this wrong," he said, pulling the thin ledger from his coat. He laid it on her desk like a snake he wanted both to keep and to kill. Nora touched the cover with 2 fingers. "Where did you get it?" "Under an X," he said. She opened the book. The paper was school stock, thin as onion skin, ruled fine. The ink had bled at the edges, but the hand was careful. Names, dates, amounts, margins full of tiny ticks and numbers that looked like notations from a hymn. Nora's eyes narrowed. Whoever wrote this knew the primer by heart. What primer? She slid open a drawer and pulled out a battered reader. Listen. Page numbers here match these numbers in the ledger margin. The first letter on each of those pages spells words if you take them in the order marked by the ticks. See? C's, track 5. Then a different script over top, a surveyor's hand. Look at these. Half chains, rods, bearings. Eli leaned in. The world narrowed to ink and paper and the smell of chalk. He saw it then, how the ticks made a coded sentence and the numbers made a map. "The map in my pocket has X's," he said. "The ledger says what each X hides." Nora nodded. C's tracks at 5 rods from section stone. Witness paid. Water diverted per plan. She looked up. Her eyes had gone cold. "Water, Eli." He felt the floor shift. He had smelled Low Creek for 2 summers, watched a neighbor's well go hard iron. He had told himself drought did that, not men. She flipped another page. Here. Goodwin Ditch. Valve locked by order of committee. Signature. Tomlin. Avery Shaw. Eli's hands clenched. He could feel wind from years back on his face, the smell of sage, a memory he had washed and hung and refused to wear because it scratched. He'd run chain for a survey outfit before cattle. A kid with strong legs and a mouth that stayed shut. The boss had sent him to move a marker once, just a little, just enough to make a line favor a man with a church pew and a banker's laugh. Eli had moved it because you did what bosses said. A month later, a family west of that marker hauled water in barrels like beggars. He'd seen their girl drinking with frantic swallows. He had kept walking because the pay was good. He breathed now, slow, as if breathing could back the years up. "I was there," he said before he could stop himself. Nora paused. "Where?" "With a chain and a brass compass," he said. "Not on the papers. On the line." She watched him for a long beat. "Then you owe more than most." Outside, the bell rope tapped in the wind. Inside, the children's voices fell to a hush and rose again like waves. Nora turned a page, frowning. "Look, the X's are numbered. 1 under your fence, 2 at the town windmill, 3 at the gallows tree, 4 near the courthouse, 5, Lord help us, 5 under the plank outside the bank door." Eli's jaw tightened. He hid them in places men step over every day. "Who is he?" she asked. Eli pointed to the bottom corner. Initials scratched small as a splinter. S.H.A. crisp hand had added another set over top in different ink. M.A. "Somebody started the book," Eli said. "Somebody finished it." Nora's mouth made a thin line. "Samuel Hart, no, not our county. Still, S.H. could be any man. But the second hand belongs to someone practiced in minutes, notations, municipal sorts. M.K. feels like a clerk. Or a map maker," Eli said. "Either way, both hands belong to someone who expected to be murdered." The door opened without a knock. Sheriff Tomlin stepped in with 2 deputies, hats on, badges dull. The room went quiet. Little hands stilled on slates. "Afternoon, Miss Finch," Tomlin said, smiling for the children. "You are teaching them to sit straight. That is good for the soul." His eyes cut to the ledger, then to Eli. "You and me need a word, Creed." Nora closed the book and laid both palms on it. "We are in arithmetic, Sheriff." "Then count to 10 while I arrest this man," Tomlin said. He kept smiling. "On what charge?" Nora asked, and her voice did not shake. "Disturbing a grave," he said. "Spreading sedition. Interfering with town works." "The only thing he disturbed was his own fence?" Nora said. "And maybe your lunch." Tomlin's smile turned glassy. He nodded to a deputy. "Hands." The man stepped forward. Eli did not raise his wrists. He thought of the girl drinking from a bucket because her well had turned to rust. He thought of the map in his pocket and the second X at the windmill. If Tomlin took him now, the rest of the book stayed underground forever. "I'll walk with you," Eli said, "after I wash." He moved slow, palms open, backing toward the cloakroom. The deputies followed like wolves scenting blood. Nora's eyes flicked toward the cloakroom door, then back to Eli. Her jaw tightened, the smallest nod giving him the answer he needed. He stepped into the cloakroom, deputies crowding close. The air was thick with chalk dust and cedar. Eli's hand brushed the wash basin, but instead of dipping, he seized the iron pitcher and swung. It cracked against the first deputy's temple, sending him sprawling into the coats. The second lunged, but Eli shoved the basin into his gut, water sloshing as the man folded. Gunmetal cleared leather in the main room. Sheriff Tomlin's voice barked, "Hold your fire, you fools, there's children." Nora had already swept the ledger off her desk and tucked it beneath her skirts. Her knuckles were white, but her eyes were steady. "Run, Eli," she hissed. He shoved past the staggering deputies, burst back into the classroom, and in 3 strides reached the rear window. Glass shattered around his shoulders as he dove through. He rolled hard on the packed earth outside, lungs burning. The school bell tolled above, struck by wind or providence, it didn't matter. Folks along Main turned toward the sound, and Eli sprinted for the alley, coat flapping, map crumpled in his pocket. Behind him, Tomlin cursed, ordering men to circle wide. Boots thundered, but Eli's rancher legs carried him fast. He ducked between the livery and the smithy, the acrid smell of coal smoke biting his throat. He cut east toward the windmill, the second X. The thought hammered in his skull. If the first hole held bones and a ledger, what waited here? And could he reach it before Tomlin's men closed the noose? The windmill creaked above the dry cistern, its blades whining in the afternoon gust. Eli skidded to a halt in the dust, shovel still lashed to his saddle from the morning dig. His horse whickered nervously. He dug, fast, desperate. The earth was softer here, damp with the memory of water. His spade hit something solid. He dropped to his knees and pulled out a wrapped bundle, oilcloth slick with age. He tore it open with shaking hands. Inside lay rolled blueprints, survey maps, and iron seals stamped with county marks. His eyes scanned the ink. Aquifer lines rerouted, valves locked, reservoirs siphoned into private ditches bearing Avery's signature. Proof that the town's lifeblood had been stolen by the very men sworn to protect it. Hoofbeats. Close! Eli stuffed the maps back into the oilcloth, heart hammering. From behind the windmill came a voice, smooth and sharp. "Now you've done it, Creed." Banker Avery stepped out, 2 riders flanking him with rifles. His city vest gleamed, though his boots were caked in dust. His smile cut like glass. "Digging in God's dirt and finding the devil's ink." Eli's mouth went dry. He clutched the bundle to his chest. "What happens next?" Avery said. "Depends on whether you hand me those papers like a sensible man, or make us bury you under the same ground you just turned." The rifles lifted. The windmill groaned. Eli's grip tightened on the oilcloth as the circle closed. Eli could feel the rifle's aim heavy on his back. The windmill moaned overhead like a hanging tree, its blades creaking slow in the dry air. Avery's polished boots left neat prints in the mud as he stepped closer, eyes glittering. "Hand it over, Creed," the banker said. "That bundle isn't yours." Never was. Eli's knuckles whitened around the oilcloth. "Funny. Map led me here. Dirt gave it up easy. Looks like it wanted out." The 2 riders shifted, rifles cocking. Avery's smile thinned. "Don't be clever. Those papers are the marrow of this town. Without them, our ditches dry, our cattle die, and every family starves." "Starves?" Eli spat. "Or pays through your bank for water you stole in the first place." A flicker crossed Avery's face, rage trying to hide behind civility. "You don't understand. The world is wolves and sheep, Creed. Some of us were born to take, others to give. That's order." Eli thought of the family west of the survey line, the girl drinking from a bucket with frantic gulps. He thought of his own herd last summer, bones showing through hide while the banker's pasture stayed green. His stomach turned. Behind Avery, hoofbeats sounded. Dust rose on the trail. 3 more riders approached, but not deputies. Eli recognized the lead, Nora Finch, skirts tucked high for the saddle, hair torn loose by wind. Her school bell still tolled in his memory, warning and promise both. Nora reined in hard. "Eli," she shouted, "don't give him a damn thing." Avery snarled, "Seize her." The two riflemen turned their horses, but Nora already had her pistol drawn. She fired once, the shot kicking dust by their mounts' hooves. The horses skittered, and one rider nearly lost his seat. Eli used the heartbeat of confusion. He flung the oilcloth into his saddlebag, vaulted onto his horse, and spurred hard. Bullets hissed past his ears, splintering the windmill's legs. He rode low, teeth clenched, as Nora wheeled to cover him, firing again and again until her pistol clicked empty. They bolted east, hooves pounding the hardpan. The riders gave chase, Avery's curses carrying on the wind. Eli's chest burned with each breath, but he clutched the reins tight, refusing to let the bundle slip free. At a dry arroyo, they ducked into cover. Horses foamed, sides heaving. Nora leaned against her saddle horn, hair plastered to her temples. "You found it, didn't you?" Eli nodded. "Maps. Seals. Proof the aquifer's been stolen out from under us. Enough to hang Avery and Tomlin both." Nora's eyes shone fierce. "Then we have to bring it to light. But if we move too soon, they'll crush us before the truth has breath." Eli pulled the dime map from his pocket, unfolding it with shaking hands. His finger traced the next mark. The third X. His throat tightened. Under the gallows tree. Nora's breath caught. The old hanging ground. Eli's voice dropped. "My father swung there." Silence pressed heavy, broken only by the wind sighing through sage. "You think," Nora said softly, "that what's buried there ties to him?" "I don't think," Eli whispered, staring at the X burned into the paper. "I know." Hoofbeats thundered above the arroyo rim. Avery's men had found their trail. Shadows cut across the ridge, rifles glinting in the sun. "Ride or die," Nora hissed. Eli shoved the map into his coat, grabbed the reins, and spurred upward. Dust blinded him as bullets sparked against stone. Ahead, the gallows tree clawed the sky, stark against the horizon, promising secrets deeper than any grave. The gallows tree rose on the ridge like a scar against the sky, its dead branches rattling in the wind. Eli reined in beneath it, chest heaving, eyes fixed on the dark earth where so many had dropped, his father among them. Nora dismounted, pistol still in her fist, gaze sharp on the horizon. "You sure you want to dig here, Eli? Men don't walk easy after disturbing ground like this." Eli swung down, shovel already in hand. "My father never had a marker, only a rope burn on his neck and whispers in taverns. If there's truth here, it's mine to find." The soil was hard, packed by years of trampling boots. He dug in silence, sweat stinging his eyes, each strike of the spade echoing like a drumbeat. Nora kept watch, scanning the slope. The shovel struck wood. Eli froze, then cleared dirt fast, revealing a pine box no larger than a trunk. He pried the lid with shaking hands. Inside lay brittle papers, a bag of coins, and, his throat closed, a locket he remembered from his boyhood, etched with his mother's initials. Nora knelt beside him, her face pale. "Eli, this isn't just evidence. It's your family." He pulled the papers out, letters, receipts, and one document that made his blood turn ice. An affidavit signed by Sheriff Tomlin himself, testifying that Eli's father confessed to stealing cattle, a lie. Attached was a receipt of payment from banker Avery, neat as church ink. "They bought his noose," Eli whispered. His hands shook so hard the pages rattled. They murdered him to bury a debt. Nora touched his shoulder, steady. Then we use this. We show them all. Before he could answer, a voice rang out across the ridge. You won't be showing anyone. A dozen riders crested the hill, rifles leveled. Sheriff Tomlin led them, jaw set like granite. Avery and Preacher Shaw rode beside him, eyes gleaming. Behind them, townsfolk Eli knew trailed. Neighbors, cowhands, even boys who once helped him mend fence. Faces twisted, some by anger, others by fear. Tomlin raised a hand. Step away from that box, Creed. You've done enough damage. Eli rose slowly, dirt clinging to his shirt, papers clenched in one fist. This is proof you framed my father. Proof you stole water. Proof you've bled this town dry. You think they'll believe you? Avery sneered. You're a rancher behind on his debts. We are the law, the bank, and the church. Our word weighs more than yours ever will. Nora stepped forward, pistol raised, eyes burning. Not if they see it themselves. Not if every man, woman, and child hears the names in that ledger and reads these letters with their own eyes. Tomlin's smile was cold. They won't. Because you won't live to show them. The deputies dismounted, forming a line. Rifles cocked. The gallows tree creaked above, as if eager for fresh weight. Eli's pulse roared in his ears. He looked at Nora, at the box, at the crowd shifting uneasily behind their leaders. The whole town balanced on the edge of a rope, and he realized the only way forward was through. He lifted the locket high so all could see. His voice carried raw across the ridge. This tree hanged my father for a crime he didn't commit. This box proves it. You can shoot me, but you can't shoot the truth. A murmur rippled through the crowd, louder than the sheriff's command to hold steady. Doubt had cracked the mask. Then Avery barked, "Enough!" and raised his revolver. The moment split like lightning. Nora fired first. The ridge exploded with gunfire, the gallows tree looming over it all. Smoke curled around the gallows tree like a noose come alive. The crack of rifles split the air, bullets chewing bark and dirt. Eli hit the ground, clutching the locket and letters to his chest, while Nora fired with the calm precision of a schoolteacher correcting sums. Her shots cracked sharp, forcing Tomlin's men to scatter along the ridge. "Flank left," Tomlin roared. But the crowd behind him hesitated. Neighbors who had come out of fear, not loyalty, were watching the papers flutter in Eli's hands more than the sheriff's badge on his chest. Eli scrambled to the pine box, yanking out the coins and papers, tossing them into the dirt where everyone could see. "Look," he shouted, voice raw. "Tomlin sold my father's life for 30 pieces of silver. Avery signed the deed that killed him." Shaw blessed it from the pulpit. Faces in the crowd shifted. Murmurs grew. A ranch hand Eli knew since boyhood lowered his rifle. Another spat in the dust. The power of the sheriff's voice cracked under the weight of doubt. Avery, desperate, lunged forward, revolver raised. "Lies!" Forged scraps dug from dirt. Nora's pistol barked. The bullet tore his sleeve, close enough to sear skin. He stumbled back, wild-eyed. "Next one takes your heart," she hissed. Tomlin, red with fury, spurred his horse closer. "Stand down, Creed." Last chance. Eli rose, chest heaving, letters clutched in one fist, locket swinging from the other. "You murdered my father to keep your secrets. You bled this town dry to fatten your pockets. If you want me silent, you'll have to hang me right here, under the same tree." The words cracked like thunder. The crowd erupted, not with gunfire, but with shouts. Men tore off their hats, women raised fists. and the deputies faltered. One dropped his rifle into the dirt, another muttered, "Not worth it," and stepped back. Tomlin realized too late the tide had turned. He wheeled his horse toward the bank of followers, but they weren't following anymore. They were staring, eyes full of betrayal. The sheriff raised his gun, aiming not at Eli, but at Nora. Eli leapt, tackling him from the saddle. The revolver fired wild, echoing across the ridge, before Tomlin hit the ground hard with Eli atop him. They grappled in the dust, fists and fury flying. Tomlin was stronger, but Eli had rage years in the making. He drove the sheriff's own badge pin deep into the man's chest, tearing the shirt and leaving a bloody mark. Tomlin gasped, eyes wide. Then went still. The ridge fell silent, but for the creak of the gallows tree. Preacher Shaw dropped his Bible in the dirt and fled down the slope. Avery tried to run too, but townsfolk caught him, dragging him back screaming. Nora helped Eli to his feet, her hands steady though her face was pale. "It's over," she whispered. Eli looked at the locket in his palm, then at the letters scattered around. "No," he said. "It's just beginning." Rain began to fall, a soft, cleansing drizzle that pattered on hats and soaked the papers until ink bled. But the words had already been read, the truth already spoken. The whole town had seen. By dawn, Avery and Shaw were locked in the jail. Tomlin's body left under the gallows tree he had once commanded. The people of Dry Creek gathered in the square, demanding every X on the map be dug, every secret dragged into daylight. Eli stood with Nora at his side, the dime map unfolded in his hands, the locket heavy on his chest. He was no longer just a rancher who bought a scrap of paper for 10 cents. He was the man who had forced a town to reckon with its sins. And he knew the next X would change even more.